Welcome back, dear viewers, to Whispers of Turkish Stars, the snug corner of YouTube where murmurs turn into stories and the smallest details are treated like clues. Before we ease into today's thread of intrigue, don't forget to subscribe, tap like, and, if you want to power this storytelling haven, consider joining the channel. Settle in, breathe out, and prepare for a tale that unfurls not in grand proclamations, but in tiny signals that somehow roared through the digital universe. It didn't start with fireworks. It started with a phrase so compact it felt almost like a shrug, "I don't know." Spoken by Barış Baktaş with that composed steadiness people have come to expect from him, it landed softly and then began to ripple outward in widening rings of curiosity. He offered the line as if placing a period on a rumor's sentence. Instead, those three words shifted hinges on a door that many thought was sealed. No one buys the idea that Barış was playing the fool. He's too observant, too deliberate. The name at the heart of the whisper was not foreign to him, Yağmur Yüksel, beautifully familiar, if anything. What he seemed to steer away from was the hushed hum rising in the background, talk of two orbits drifting closer, warmth no longer kept at arm's length, a gentle revival that felt like a chord struck in private. He tried to douse the spark with a cool response. He ended up feeding the flame. Then came the smallest confession the modern world knows how to make. A tap. Follow. Barely heavier than a sigh, but in the economy of attention and affection, it tolls like a bell. Out of nowhere, Barış began following the lifestyle account Yağmur had quietly launched. No fanfare, no manifesto, just little vignettes of calm, early morning tea steaming into pale light, sun boarding a windowsill like a memory, rooms that seemed to inhale and hold. That single gesture, featherlight as it was, lit the internet like a fuse. And of course the comment fields bloomed into investigations. Fans lined up in threads like hobby detectives with magnifying glasses. New posts were dissected, frames paused and brightened, pixels inspected with reverence. The chorus of theories rose with a courtroom's conviction, classic Barış. He always leaves a trail. Coincidence? Be serious. The internet's imagination, once roused, is a storm that never asks permission. Then a glint changed the weather. A ring means nothing until, suddenly, it means everything. In a video filmed in what looked like tender afternoon light, with Yağmur moving through her home like a person at peace, a slim band made a quiet appearance on her finger. Subtle. Unshowy. More secret than decorative. The digital world does not let secrets stay small. Screenshots multiplied. Shadows were lifted. Brightness was pushed to the edge of distortion. The ring became a subject, and the public became its panel of experts. Platforms erupted with their familiar music. TikTok at its poured in, quick as rain. Instagram turned into a gallery of side-by-sides and hyper-focused crops. Twitter, restless, caffeinated, loud, assembled its jury of romantics, skeptics, and forensic obsessives. They examined everything that could point to place in time. The grain in a table, the gleam of a kettle, the ghostly hint of a reflection in glass. Countertops were compared, marble veins argued over, chairs matched to old posts. When a surface resembled one from Barış's world, the gavel fell, that's his place. When a lamp matched a photo from hers, that's her home. When both felt familiar. This stopped feeling like chance. But the moment that truly held time still arrived later, as if dropped from a quiet sky. A photograph appeared online without a caption, without a tag, without a single breadcrumb except the image itself. Two people seated beside each other with an ease that cannot be staged. Barış wore a mild, just woken smile. Yağmur seemed caught in a moment she didn't mind sharing. The ring, patient and steady, drew another breath of light. For anyone who has followed their rhythm, it all sounded like a melody they already knew. Barış has always kept his own tempo. He avoids spectacle, refuses to play to a crowd, resists clarity until he chooses a single, heavy detail that redraws the map. His philosophy remains simple: he won't audition for approval, but he won't live pressed into the shadows either. Yağmur moves by a different compass. She brightens instead of declaring. She lets light do her speaking. She offers glimpses instead of explanations, and those glimpses hum with more truth than an interview ever could. The reaction was a spectrum. The true blue romantics were first to lift their voices, they were always going to find their way back. The careful realists kept a measured distance, isn't this a touch fast? Between them stretched a vast field of curiosity, the same tug that probably draws you a little closer to the screen right now. Let me turn to you, what do you see? A reunion written years ago, finally stepping into daylight? Or two people caught in coincidences amplified by our collective fascination? Drop your take in the comments, and while you're there, remember you can support Whispers of Turkish Stars by joining our membership and keeping these stories thriving. Let's return to the thread of time. Recent murmurs suggested that both Barış and Yağmur have been living in a slower key. Their days have traded adrenaline for intention. Friends of Barış talk about a man who has learned to savor the quiet, dawn over midnight, intimate cafes over glittering rooms, the real over the polished. Those close to Yağmur mention a softness you can't fake, the look of someone who no longer braces against every gust of wind. Which raises a tempting thought, what if this isn't a beginning at all, but a chapter that was folded neatly and slipped back into the story until someone chose to open it again? Maybe we were simply reading from the wrong corner of the tapestry. A ring can be a decoration. In the orbit of people this watched, it almost never is. When it shows up without the trumpet of red carpets or glossy covers, it turns into a riddle looped around a finger. A truth so thinly disguised it might as well be confessing. The investigations didn't slow. If anything, the devotion became almost tender. Angles of sunlight were studied like time-lapse. The shapes of plants, the pattern of rugs, the curve of mugs, the quiet story told by a teapot's reflection, all of it catalogued. Screenshots were saved as though preparing for a trial none of us agreed to but all of us attend. And as the archive grew, a realization flickered, the authentic leaves traces, even when people try not to leave any. That uncaptioned photo felt like a sigh that had been waiting to be released. Nothing in it looked rehearsed. Their shoulders rested, their bodies leaned imperceptibly inward, a familiarity lived in rather than posed. It was the face people wear when an old joke visits and both remember the punchline at once. The pattern held, Barış stayed allergic to performance and then spoke by doing. Yağmur kept letting the light tell the tale. Together they wrote a page without writing a word, and everyone still read it. Some call this fate. Others prefer timing. The truth may hover somewhere in the stillness between the two, close enough to feel, far enough to remain theirs. Which leads us to the question that now sits on the table between us, where does the story float from here? Are we standing at the doorway of something newly built, or watching a river find its old course after a long detour? If there is more to tell, it will arrive in their usual language, slowly, sparingly, with care. Perhaps another ring catching the sun. Perhaps another picture that pretends to be casual and tells us more than any caption could. And if there is nothing beyond this, a season with its own quiet end, then consider how extraordinary it is that three ordinary words briefly stopped the world's clock. Before we let you go, I'll ask once more for your heart's verdict. Does this feel like closure, rebirth, or simply a continuation written in finer ink? Would you want to see Barış Baktaş and Yağmur Yüksel here on our couch at Whispers of Turkish Stars, no noise, no crowds, answering questions you've always wanted to ask? If so, leave those questions below. Imagine 10 calm minutes, 2 warm cups, and room for honesty. What would you bring to the table? Like this video if you enjoyed the chase, subscribe if you crave more whispered truths, and consider joining our channel if these deep dives are your kind of late-night company. This has been Whispers of Turkish Stars, and we will meet again when the next quiet clue becomes impossible to ignore. Still, as the discussion blooms and interpretations multiply, let's thread a few more details back through the loom. When Barış said those words, light as driftwood, plain as tap water, he knew what would follow. He's seen the cycle enough times to predict the weather. Yet he chose calm, and calm became his message. Watch me, he seems to be saying, not because I ask you to, but because I live in daylight. And when he followed that account, a corner of the internet curated by Yağmur to hold serenity and slow mornings, he didn't announce the follow. He simply arrived and stood in the doorway like someone who recognizes the room. As for the ring, it refused to shout. Its language was minimal, a gleam here, a line there. If you've ever worn something for reasons that mean more to you than to the audience, you know its secret. It felt less like a display and more like a talisman, the kind that reminds you to stay steady when wind rattles the panes. The timing of its revealed presence, first in motion, then in stillness, read like intention, or at least like an acceptance of whatever story others would write. Quietly, it asked to be seen, and then it allowed people to decide what they thought they were looking at. The room detectives did not rest. They cross-referenced wood tones. They matched the curve of a chair's back to last fall's post. They weighed the dusting of light across tile. They pulled out receipts from memory. That lamp has appeared before, that painting hangs in another frame. And if they sometimes reach too far, they also reminded us of a charming truth about fandom, that it is, at its best, an expression of care. Care looks like attention, and attention builds archives. In the middle of it all, both of them kept their pace. Barış didn't sprint to deny or confirm, he walked. Yağmur didn't shield the camera, she guided the light. When they sat side by side in that unembellished image, their comfort seemed to do all the work explanation could have done. Intimacy, when it's real, wears no costume. It simply fits. Is it destiny? Is it timing? Call it practice, perhaps, the practice of returning to what fits, when it fits. There's a grace in choosing patience, in preferring meaningful breaths over dramatic speeches. And perhaps that's why this moment, whether it opens into a chapter or remains a luminous fragment, feels like there's above all. So tell us, are you reading an overture or an echo? Should we bring them onto the set of Whispers of Turkish Stars and let your questions lead the evening? Picture the quiet, picture the space, picture the light. Then picture the answers, the ones that arrive without being forced. Leave your questions below. Your voice keeps this conversation alive. Until next time, remember that sometimes the loudest confession is a whisper, sometimes the clearest picture has no caption, and sometimes the most important sentence is the one too simple to overthink. Subscribe, like, and if you can, join our little community so that these slow bloom stories keep finding their way to your screen. From all of us at Whispers of Turkish Stars, we'll be listening for the next hint the world drops when no one is trying too hard to be heard.